about the last time I spoke. I was speaking out of, let's see if that will actually happen. Steve is running. It's in Colossians chapter 1, verse 9. And it is a prayer of Paul for the church. The premise that I'm working on is that if Paul prayed for it, it is something we really need to have. Okay? But the rub in the whole thing is that if he's praying that God would give it to the church, that means you cannot produce, the church cannot produce it themselves. If Paul is praying to God for God to give it to the church, that means that he cannot give it, Paul could not give it to them, and they could not produce it themselves. Do you get what I'm saying? If Paul is praying for it, saying, God, give this to them because they absolutely got to have it, but they can't get it. That's the rub. That's what prayer is all about. Is God, we absolutely got to have it, but we can't get it. We can't produce it. We can't buy it. We can't good behavior ourselves into it. And we can't get some apostle someplace to come and impart it to us. Oh, now I really said something. If Paul couldn't give it to them, why do you think some other person is going to give it to the church? Okay, well, I don't want to. Okay, so here we are in a prayer of Paul. And what he says in that prayer, must have hit. There we are. Colossians chapter 1, verse 9. What?
You're in full control.
Oh, sorry. I wish I was. He says, I pray that you might be filled with the knowledge of His will in all spiritual wisdom. Now, that's not his whole prayer, but we got to take one bite at a time here. And we're working on spiritual wisdom. The last time I spoke about spiritual wisdom, I pretty much said that spiritual wisdom is seeing life, this walk around life of ours, from God's perspective. Okay? And that if we see our lives and life in general and everything that is going on that affects us, that's going on in the world, from any other perspective other than God's perspective, that is what's called foolishness. Okay? Seeing things from God's perspective is called wisdom. Spiritual wisdom, because you can only get it from the Spirit. You can only get it from the Holy Spirit. You can't earn it. You can't produce it. And nobody can impart it to you, for crying out loud. If Paul couldn't, nobody else can, except Jesus Himself. All right. So to any other perspective, you say, well, I'm close to God's perspective on life. Foolishness. Okay. But now I'm going to move on to a second aspect of spiritual wisdom. And I have this up there right now. Look at it. It says wisdom. Seeing the reality behind the outward appearance. This is another side. Remember what Paul said? He said that we are supposed to be showing forth the manifold wisdom of God, Ephesians chapter 3. We're supposed to be showing forth the manifold wisdom of God. What does manifold mean? Many-sided. This is another side to the wisdom of God right here. It's not the only side, just like the perspective of God's perspective is not the only side either. There are many that we can have the adventure of discovering as we go along. But this is the one that I want to talk about today, and I think that it's important for our lives. Seeing the reality behind the outward appearance. All right. So, Paul has a place where he speaks about wisdom and foolishness more than any place else in the Scriptures. And that's in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, 2, and 3. Just like he speaks more than any place else about the charisma of God in chapters 12, 13, and 14, he speaks about wisdom in chapters 1, 2, and 3. We cannot ignore these and say that we are spiritually wise. Must learn from these places. So here's the first thing I want to say out of 1 Corinthians chapter 2, 14 that has to do with seeing the reality behind. Here's what Paul says about spiritual wisdom. He says, the things of the Spirit of God are spiritually discerned. They're spiritually discerned. The things of the Spirit of God are spiritually discerned. And the word discerned, it has to do with sight. It means scrutinize, to scrutinize something. It's to carefully examine it. It also has the flavor to look through, which has to do with what I said, seeing the reality that's behind the outward appearance. There is a possibility to do that. Now, that means, as I said the last time I spoke, is that there's all these realities out there that ain't real. There's all these things saying, I'm real, I'm the truth, I'm right. And they're not. And spiritual wisdom has to do with being able to see through that to what is true, what is real behind it. Now, I'm going to do something here. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is... I can do this. I can do this. Okay, can everybody see that? Everybody see that? All right. Back in the day, Rocky let me in on all the secret techniques of good cartoon drawing, and since that time, I've been refining. I've been refining his techniques. Here's the way I mental picture of this. Sorry about you guys that are off to the sides. Is that so? Here we are, right here, and something comes along in our lives, in the news, or any other place. Somebody we're talking to, and they're really telling you what they think is true, real, right. Okay? To be able to have wisdom is to be able to see through. See, here's that thing. Here's that idea. Here's that concept. Here's that situation. Here's that wisdom. And you are able to see through it to the truth behind. Okay? Now we say that term a lot. We say, I see through that guy. Yeah, he sounds good, but I see through. I see the reality behind his outward appearance. Yeah, I see through him. And we've got a whole world that is busy, preoccupied, in fact, with seeing through everybody else. See? I see through you guys. I see through this culture. I see through this political thing or whatever it might be. I see through it, and you know the saying on TV lately. I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. Okay? I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. And when it comes to wisdom here, is that everybody says, well, I'm not much, but there's a couple things I've seen. Say, I know a thing or two. And everybody is saying that to themselves. And some people are crass enough to say it out loud to everybody else. I know a thing or two, and let me tell you. Let me demonstrate that to you. And the thing of wisdom is that it's able to see through that. Okay? And so that's the first thing I want to say. I'm not done with that at all. And most of you already see a problem with this thing. You already see a problem. Okay? And if you don't, I'm going to help with that. So the things of God is where we see through. If we're going to see the things of the Spirit of God, that means that we're going to have to see through the outward appearance of this world. Because there is an outward appearance that looks real, that looks right, that looks true, that looks logical, that looks some other ways here that I'll get to. Let's go on here. Thing is that there's not only God's wisdom, there is another wisdom. There is another wisdom that is in competition. The reason why it's in competition with God's wisdom is because it's pretty darn convincing. If it wasn't, nobody would have anything to do with it. Okay? But it is, and it is not, and I think that lots of people say, they go to James and they say, this wisdom is not from above, but it's earthly, sensual, and devilish. Okay? And so, well, yeah, you can go into the thing that it's all demonic. And you can go that direction. But Paul doesn't go that direction when he talks about wisdom in 1 Corinthians 1, 2, and 3. He says this about wisdom. He says that in verse 6 of chapter 2, the world has its own wisdom. We speak wisdom among the mature, but the wisdom, not the wisdom of this world, nor the wisdom of the princes of this world, which is passing away. Wow, he says some really important things about this other wisdom here. He says that this wisdom is of this world. And you say, okay, the ruler of this world is the devil and things like that. We're not going to go that direction. We're going to talk about what Paul says the wisdom of the world is like. It has some characteristics to it. And if we realize these things, maybe then what it will do is that it will cause us to cling to the Lord a little bit more strongly. It says that several places, 1 Corinthians 2:6 says it's the wisdom of this world. 1 Corinthians 1:21 says the world by its wisdom. The world, its wisdom. The world has its own wisdom. And 3:19, the wisdom of this world again. 3 different places there that talk about the fact that God has His wisdom, but the world has its own wisdom too. Let's take a look at this a little bit more. Wisdom is the word sophos. All right, so most of you hate Greek, but this one has an important piece right here, the word sophos, and we don't do much with, in our current culture, but we don't understand wisdom. We don't understand what wisdom is. We think of wisdom and we think of an old guy who has been through a lot of pain and suffering in his life, or he has seen a thing or two, so he knows a thing or two, and he has wisdom. Okay, the wisdom of age, the wisdom of experience. And that's what we think of as wisdom, but we don't even hardly ever, nobody on street level uses the word wisdom or wise. Okay? We have another word that's based on the Greek word sophos. And the word is, as you can see it up there, sophisticated. We use the word sophisticated rather than the word wise. Ooh, he is sophisticated. And suddenly, doesn't that put a different spin on it? Now we're not talking about the old guy who says, yeah, back in my day. See, we're not talking about that guy anymore. Now we're talking about something entirely different. We're talking about what we call, as I said, well, the definition of sophisticated is that which appeals to the current cultural tastes through deceptively attractive reasoning. Ooh, let me read that to you again. This is like current events here. That which appeals to the current cultural tastes through deceptively attractive reasoning. That's, where do you think I got that definition from? A dictionary. A current Webster's collegial dictionary will tell you that sophisticated, or that which we consider to be wise, or somebody who has wisdom, is someone who appeals to the current cultural tastes through deceptively attractive reasoning. That is what our day calls wisdom. Now, sophisticated is a word that's used in lots of places, but the kids keep on changing the words all the time. And I just put down a few that, one that means the same thing as wisdom is a word that's been around since World War II, maybe even longer than that, but it's endured. It's the word cool. The word cool. We don't use the word that's wise or you've got a lot of wisdom. What they say is you're cool. Yeah, he's cool. And that word is endured for some time. Keeps on changing, but that's a characteristic of the world. But basically, coolness is highly to be desired, and it means you're sophisticated in my cultural tastes. You are sophisticated in my cultural tastes. The way I like things to be, you're cool. Another one that's up there these days is dope. My wife and I discussed this last night. She says, "What do you got that? That means drugs. That means drugs." No, you are so unsophisticated. You guys are so stupid if you think that dope means drugs. Dope means sophisticated. Dope, that is dope. That means you are sophisticated. According to the cultural tastes. They'll say that about their iPhones. The kids will say that about, this is dope. See, another one that is really current, and if you know this one, you really have a coolness factor. You really are considered wise in the world's wisdom. And that is woke. Woke. What? That used to mean that I was asleep, but now I woke. I woke. But now it's been changed to an adjective. It's not a verb any longer. It's changed to an adjective, and that is especially among the kids who are activists, is that woke means I have awakened out of the stupor, the stupidity of the way things are. I have been enlightened. In other words, I've got wise. I got wise to the ways, the evil machinations. I'm woke. So those are some things that are the current words that mean what Paul says, wise, wisdom. The world's wisdom has to do with what this culture considers to be cool, dope, woke at this present time. At this present time. Another word Paul talks about in this chapter, he says, "Where is the debater of this world?" And you would think, what does that have to do with wisdom? You look up the word debater, and you will find that right there in the dictionary, like I said before, I know you hate it, but it might do you some good to dust that dictionary off. Look under the word debater, you will find the word sophist. Sophist, wow. And all the people said, what? Hey? Whoever used the word sophist. Okay. But that doesn't mean that there aren't sophists galore in our culture. In fact, we live off of them. Just like they did back in Corinth, is that these are the rock stars of our day. These are the sophists. And what is a sophist? Plato said this way back when Paul was talking about sophists in 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Plato had already defined what a sophist is. Remember, the word comes from sophist, which means a wise one. A wise one. Here's the sophist. One who makes the worst reason appear to be the better reason. one who makes the worst reason appear to be the better reason. That is a sophist. Does that remind you of anybody in our culture? Absolutely. In every area, whether it be politics, economics, education, military, environment, in all areas, what we have is that we have a whole, what would you call it, dog pile of people trying to make their reason sound the best, even though if you had any kind of wisdom to see through it, you would realize that it's the worst. It's called spin today. It's called spin. How are we going to spin this to make this really worst, this real screw up, this real bad idea, this real bad action? How can we spin that to make it appear the best idea, the best action, the best intentions along the way? And that all has to do, you guys, with what the world calls wisdom. Okay, let me go on here. And then we have Webster's Dictionary on sophist. A sophist is one who practices clever reasoning that appears good without really being good. Okay. You can apply this to any area that floats your boat, any area that you are, like I talked about a couple weeks ago, any aspect of life that makes you boil. You will find that there are those who are practicing clever reasoning to make it appear good without really actually being good. Got to dig into the word world here. What is the world? Okay, I think that most people, as soon as they hear the word world, they think of 1 John, all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Okay, but that, yes, is true. But let's get down to the basics of what the word, when Paul used the word world here, he was not using the term for all of humanity. He wasn't even using the term world as the bad behavior of humanity. He used the word here, it's the word aeon. And the word aeon has nothing to do with bad behavior. It has nothing to do with smoking and chewing or running around or any number of other sins. It has nothing to do with sins. No, it doesn't, even though that is what we've been told the world means. The world simply means a period of time. And everybody goes, shucks, I was waiting for something juicy. No. When Paul said the wisdom of this world, he was talking about the wisdom of this period of time. He was not talking about what are the sins of humanity. He was talking about what is the current cultural tastes of this period of time. It does not mean ages like the Stone Age, okay, or the Jurassic Age, or the Age of Aquarius even. or any of those other things like that. It has to do that we think are these long periods of time. See, these.
It did kind of mean the age of Aquarius for a short time.
But see, this is my point right now. For a short time, for a very, very, very short time, it did mean the age of Aquarius. But that's my point, is that it has nothing to do with long periods of time. It has to do with this time, right now, our current time. And it doesn't take forever for those things to happen. An example that I want to give you is that in Matthew 21, what did the multitude say of Jesus? Hosanna to the Son of David. Okay, that was the current cultural tastes at that time. That was what the current wisdom was, is that this guy is the Messiah. 5 days later. That's an age. That was 5 days later. What has the current wisdom become? Crucify him. That's what we're talking about the wisdom of this present period of time. It can change really fast. And we've seen that as we watch our world as it's spinning along here, how fast the culture changes its tastes. How fast this happens. I was talking before about boundaries, is that, he said, okay, this is the boundary, this doesn't move, this is, and you turn around, you come back, and it's not there anymore. Because the wisdom of this world can change that fast, and it does. And it doesn't just happen now. It's always been that way. The conspiracy against Jesus was that way. Long there. So, okay, the next word that I want to get to as I'm going through this thing of we do not speak the wisdom of this world, is that it says the next thing. It says, nor the wisdom of the princes of this world. When I say the word princes, what do you think of? What is your mental image that pops into your head of a prince? Well, it has to do with somebody who is making the rules. Right? Has to do with somebody who had in a certain area or among a certain people is the ruler. And what does rule mean? Dictionaries are a good thing. What does rule mean? Is that it means those who exercise influence over or hold sway. Now, there probably was a time when kings were actually the people who had the influence over people or held sway over them. Example way back in antiquity was Josiah. King Josiah, he, with the help of some priests, found the book of the law, and he had enough influence and sway over a large amount of people that he changed the whole direction of their culture. Okay? So you think, okay, who are the princes of this present period of time? If you still think that political leaders are the princes at this particular time, the ones that hold sway over the thinking and beliefs and attitudes of large groups of people, you are incredibly naive to think that the political leaders are incredibly naive because they really believe that they hold sway over the opinions, beliefs, and attitudes of large groups of people. Okay, I'm not saying that they don't have some sway, but let me ask a few questions here and see if you can guess it. Okay, let's take, let's see, let's go with, let's see, somebody here. Let's go with Jason over here. Jason, who has more influence over your behavior? The police department or the bank? What? The bank is the prince of our times? That's not what we think of when we think of the wisdom of the princes of this time. Daniel, who has more influence over what you believe and what you go about your daily life with? A famous politician or your favorite musician? See? Okay. I got another one here. Who has affected the opinion of the world more concerning our environment? Scientists that have been cranking out facts for 30 to 35 years? Or a little Swedish girl who scolds world leaders? Who has affected attitudes about that more? Who's the real prince of our time? Who has sway? Okay? Another one. Which one is going to be believed more? 3 weeks of demonstrations in the streets? Or a speech by the mayor that says there is no problem? Who's the princes of our time? We have a word that we use rather than princes. And it is right at the bottom of the screen there. Though our word, even though this word is a fairly new one in itself, we call them trendsetters. Trendsetters. A person or thing that establishes particular direction for others. Okay. It is part and it is a characteristic of this world's wisdom that there are those that hold sway over your direction. And the less you realize it, the better it is. Anybody know what lemmings are? It's fascinated people for thousands of years. One lemming will start heading for the cliff. And millions will simply follow it. Okay? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the alternative to God's wisdom. We're talking about this world's style of being cool, of being dignified. If I run over the cliff along with the rest of them, that shows that I'm a sophisticated person. Come on! You right now are saying, and we'll get to that. You see, everybody here is saying, not me. Everybody here is saying, not me. I know a thing or two. See, everybody here, I read minds. Okay, lemmings, let's go on. The next part of that verse says, the wisdom of the princes of this world, because the trendsetters of this world are not spewing, are publishing, giving out a wisdom. Okay? They're giving out a wisdom, a perspective. See? All right, so, but the last part of what Paul says about worldly wisdom is that it says not only the wisdom of this world or the wisdom of the princes of this world, and then he puts in a real kicker, which is passing away. Which is passing away. When I say the word passing away, what do we think of? We think, yeah, that's right, he passed away. Okay? Or is passing away means he's dying. Okay? He is passing away. That means he's dying. At best, we think it's something that is fading away to nothing. But that is the interesting thing about studying the words that are in the Bible. What a concept. Is that here we find out that the word passing away, and I'm not making this up, you guys, you can get into. You can look this up for yourself and verify it. It doesn't mean passing away. You know what it really means when Paul said the wisdom of this world and the wisdom of the princes of the world is passing away? He said it is passing by. It is passing by, which is a lot different than passing away. All right. It's passing by in that it's like a parade. Trust me, the world is not dying. And everybody knows that the world is not dying. It's alive and well. And all of its wisdom is alive and well. Trust me, it's formidable. It is seductive. But it's like a parade, is what Paul said. It says the wisdom of the world, the wisdom of the trendsetters of the world is always on the move. It's always passing by and passing by and passing by and passing by all the time. It's just like a parade in that, okay, you're at a parade, and some of our parades aren't very long. But I'm talking about the world's parade that never ends. Okay? And what it does is it's like you're stationary And the wisdom of this world is like floats that pass by with every possible what's my word I'm looking for? Demonstration, every possible style, every possible kind of people on these floats. Okay, and some of our floats, we got a band going by. Whoa, okay, wow. The thing about it is that you normally, unless you're a little kid, because you're not sophisticated yet, you normally stay put and you watch it go by. See? And the reason why parades are so fun is because nothing stays the same. You always can look forward to something else coming as something else leaves. Going home the other day, there was a guy on the side of the road, and man, was he ever dope. Young kid, 18 years old. Wow. And he had his cap on backwards, and he had a hoodie on, and he had black pants on that came down to just below his knees, or actually kind of maybe a little bit lower than that. And I of course, you've all seen, and I just thought, isn't it funny how just a little while ago, it wasn't that long ago, that you were really cool, dope, woke, if you wore long pants that drug on the ground and they were really wide, they were skin tight up here, and then they were really wide down in the bottom. Well, but see, the thing about it is that I want you to get away from this idea that the world means that it goes on and on and on and on forever. World without end, amen. Okay? We're talking about something that keeps changing all the time. So here's this guy that at the time that those of us were wearing bell bottoms, would you have ever been caught dead wearing a pair of pants that were cut off about right here if you were going to be sophisticated, if you're going to be cool? Would you? Never, never. You'd be the laughing stock. Okay? Just a little while ago. At that same time, if you wore your hat backwards, what did that mean? Yeah, you were a cat. You were a cat. I didn't think of that one. Thank you, Bob. Clever lad that he is. It meant that you were but a child. You had a little beanie. You would not be caught dead wearing your hat backwards, unless you really were looking for a fight. Somebody. So what I'm saying is that this parade keeps moving. Is that it just keeps moving, and there's always something. You think that pants cut off here, hoodies, backwards with tats all over from head to foot, is it's going to stay that way? But that's the foolishness of this world, is that we believe it's going to stay that way. Is that there'll just be more tats. There'll just be more baggy pants. There'll just be more of this. And it'll go on in a straight line. It won't. There's the next float coming. And I'll tell you, it's different than the one that you're looking at right now. And it's different than the one that you were watching just a little while ago. Here's the problem with these floats and this parade that's going on, is that, at least in our society, most of the time, the people on the floats are not enticing you to get on the float with them. But in the world, in this the wisdom of this present world, the people on the floats, the spirits on the floats, the attractions that are on the floats are enticing you powerfully. And if this particular float doesn't entice you, what about the next one? See? Or what about the next one? See? And so what we have is that we have the wisdom of this world that keeps on passing by, never ending, by the way. And there's an enticement to get on. Now, all the gray hair in this room, there's very few in here that when you go out, that you put on your black baggy pants that come to here to go downtown or go to the mall or meet your friends or go out to eat or something like that. And you wear, and don't forget the shoes with no socks. And wouldn't want to go anywhere without your hoodie. See, we're not that way. But that kind of float strongly draws a multitude, as the scriptures would say, a multitude. See, but that doesn't mean that I'm old and I'm wise now and I don't buy into any of that. Whoa! All I would have to do is say the name of a certain politician here, and we would find out what float you have jumped on. Say, well, I don't wear baggy pants. I know. But what else are you, quote unquote, symbolically wearing? And on it goes like that. So I think that it's really interesting that what Paul was saying here, and he says it another time in 1 Corinthians. He just says in 1 Corinthians 7:31, the fashion, that means the outward appearance. Remember at the beginning we're talking about seeing through the outward appearance, the reality behind, is that the fashion or the outward appearance of this world, this present time, passes by. The word, of course, that's in our Bibles is pass away. But that's not what it says. It says that the fashion of this world passes by. Just think about fashions. I mean, women's fashions. Okay. It just keeps on passing by. And you keep on looking. And every once in a while you go, I'm joining that one. I'm going to get on that float. Okay? And you buy thinking that that'll be good for the rest of my life. Is it good for the rest of your life? How many shoes do you have? How many, Oh yeah, I know. But it keeps on passing by. And then John turns around and says the same thing when he's talking about the world. He says, the world with its desires is passing by. It's the same word in all those places. The apostles saw the wisdom of this world as a passing parade with incredibly strong pull for you to join. That's what I'm wanting to get to you guys today. Okay, here we are back to seeing the reality behind the outward appearance is wisdom. And here is what I want to point out as my last parting shot here, is that in 1 Corinthians, Paul gives two warnings about the wisdom of this world. Within those chapters, he gives two warnings about it. And you might think, well, I don't need any warnings about it. Yeah, you might. You might. And here's a couple of them that I want to, is that the first warning that I put down, well, there's two warnings, and the first one I chose to put on first is, let no man deceive himself. Okay? Let no man deceive himself. And that's the one that and I'm sorry the configuration here is not very good for those of you on the sides, but let's say that here you are and you see through the outward appearance and you go, I've discovered the truth behind it. I've discovered the reality behind it. They don't fool me. I've seen the reality of things. Only to find out that this is simply another layer of deceptive reasoning to appeal to cultural tastes. As I said up there, what is that? That's sophistication, is using deceptive reasoning to appeal to cultural tastes, that what you actually did, instead of seeing through the first deception to the reality, is that you just saw to another layer of deception. Does that happen? Oh, it happens all the time. In fact, we can't wait to find out why the thing that is currently decreed and announced to be the way things really are, we finally got to the bottom of it. Only to find out, no, we didn't get to the bottom of it at all. All we got to was another layer of world's wisdom. And it appeals to us. And we like it. And we jump on it. And we ride it. So, then, you're really clever. Not only do you see through the first one, you see through the second one. And now you've got the truth. The thing that Paul is talking about is because this thing keeps passing on and on and on, is that you deceive yourself. Let no man deceive himself about worldly wisdom. Don't deceive yourself about this, is that every time you think you have seen through to the reality, to the bottom of the scandal. Okay? To find out who was really behind it all. See, all you found is that in just a little while, that all you've done is encountered another layer of this world's wisdom. And another one. And another one. And another one. Remember I said, we are naive enough to think that once we've identified something, it's going to stay put. Don't deceive yourself. It will not stay put. And for you to pursue through world methods truth, to pursue through world methods truth, to find what really is going on, to find out what's at the very bottom of this conspiracy, what's really happening in the music scene today, what's really happening with fashion, and on and on. What's really going on with climate change? See, and on and on. How many of us have jumped on one or the other? Jumped on one, jumped on the other, throwing tomatoes back and forth. Okay. Yes. Yeah. But then the seduction is to find out who turned that into a lie. Yeah, the thing about it is that none of it is true. There you go.
That's where he's going.
That's where I'm going. Taking me a long time to get there, excruciatingly long to get there along the way. But this is the thing, is that there is this, but I got to get to this last one here, is that none of these are true. And they're all being manipulated. They're all being manipulated by somebody, and they are good at it. What does it say? It says, appealing to the cultural tastes of this particular moment with deceptively attractive reasoning. Deceptively attractive reasoning. But here's the last one. Let no man boast before God. Is that if you get to the point where you go, I've seen through, nobody else has seen through, but I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. And this is where not only do you deceive yourself, but one of the ways that you can realize that you're deceiving yourself is to start boasting in it and say, I've seen through. You and me, we've seen through. And I'm keeping an eye on you. See? And so here we have the situation where we keep on going with the methods that are, and they're sophisticated. I'm not saying they're stupid. They're really sophisticated. They're really sophisticated methods. But they will never lead you to the truth. What does Paul say about people like this? Ever learning and never coming to the knowledge of the truth. You can go on learning, you can go on uncovering, you can go on peeling the layers forever and never come to the knowledge of the truth. That is a curse. That is a curse right there. And it's a seductive one. And people by the millions follow this pattern here and can't wait for the new installment of what's the next juicy episode in whatever it is that I have been attracted to. Whatever I have that's been attracted to. So, and as I said at the very end of the last time I spoke, it says, so what's the answer to all this? It says the first thing is you got to acknowledge that this is futile. Paul says in another place within this chapter, he says, the Lord knows that the reasonings of the wise are futile. are futile. This is, if this scratches you where you itch, you really need to turn away from it. Because the scriptures are very clear, is that you can only come to the knowledge of the truth by an entirely different method. And it has nothing to do with all this sophistication. It says, if any man lack wisdom, but see, that's the rub, is that most of us think we don't lack wisdom. We got this. We got this. Yeah, all the rest of them are idiots. But I got to figure it out. Is to admit that I lack wisdom, and then if any man lack wisdom, ask of God. And God will give it to you. These kind of people say, that's really stupid. But God says, if I say that's wise, if I say that that's wise, ask me and I will give it to you. If that's wise, what is all the other perspectives?